I'm a frugal marketer, but now is a great time to be a frugal marketer for two reasons. One is no one really wants to spend money in this economy, or they want to spend it wisely. The other is that social media is turning out to be a very cost-effective tool for marketers. So it actually works well for people that tend to be frugal or want to focus on what are the results we're getting from it. So I'm going to focus on two questions, kind of the why and how of getting money, your bang for your buck out of marketing. So if we start first with the why, I have a chart from a management consulting firm called McKinsey & Company. And I think this is an interesting chart, and that what it shows is the technology adoption of certain technologies in terms of how productive they are. So what it says is in the beginning when you start adopting technology, it's not that productive, but then all of a sudden there's a spike where it becomes very productive, and then it starts to plateau. So all of the CRM systems and supply chain management systems and e-commerce websites that we've set up, all of that stuff has been tremendously productive, but it's kind of run its course over the last 10 years. It started about 10 years ago, it's been great, all these web content things have been great, but it's kind of run its course. From McKinsey's perspective, the next thing that's coming up is around social media and Web 2.0, and really leveraging a whole new set of technologies that you can see there. A whole new set of technologies that are really starting to kick off right now. And I'd say that we're pretty early. Everybody's kind of putting their toes in the water around social media, Web 2.0. Probably in the next couple of years, we'll see that the productivity we see out of these types of technologies will increase dramatically. And then probably in about 6 or 7 years, it will start to plateau, and then there'll be a new set of technologies that we'll actually see come about. In terms of, and I'd say for this conversation, it's to focus on, I'll focus on what our experiences are in these areas. So I'll be pretty brief because I was worried that I might have been a little long-winded earlier this morning. In terms of getting your best bang for your buck, so how do you do that? So I'm going to share just a handful of examples. The first example is video. No better voice of our company than our employees and our customers. Dirt cheap to do. We ended up taking a video conference, a conference room that had no windows. Everybody hated to use it. In fact, nobody used it. We said, great, the darker the better. We turned it into a video studio. So the first thing in terms of tactics, create a lot of videos. The second thing is blogging. So I think everybody's looked at blogging and say, okay, everybody's doing it. What do we do about blogging? And I'm the first to be skeptical about blogging. I think that there's a lot of, as media companies, I think media companies are great at blogging, and I love reading a number of blogs. When vendors blog, I always wonder, okay, is there an ulterior motive to this? Like, what exactly is going on that, I see a vendor blogging? And so I approached it with a little bit of skepticism, but we've orchestrated a coordinated program on making our bloggers work. And I'll say that we view it as we're kind of in blogging 3.0. So blogging 1.0 was, go ahead and blog, but before you post, make sure you run it by our general counsel, make sure we run it by our CFO, and then just make sure the CEO has said okay, and then go ahead and post. And what we found is, nobody posted. And we were like, why aren't they posting? So we said, oh, we did it all wrong. What we're going to do is take away all the rules. So whatever you want to post, whatever you want to write about, if you want to write about your weekend at Waterworld, great, write about it. And what we saw is a lot of people started blogging, but nobody read it. So then we said, well, that's not really working. And so we feel like we're in our third generation where we're much more focused, and I'd say I put a lot more thought about the blogging program. And in fact, one would argue that blogging is about 20% of success of a blogging program. So it's important, but it's actually not necessarily the most important part of the blogging program. So we've actually been concerted in terms of making, we started with one person to be successful. That person is now getting about 25,000 page views a month. So for us, that's success in terms of our market. Now we're looking to replicate that. So I think blogging is good, but know that there's a lot of, I think, bad blogging practices, and you just got to make sure that you're smart around how you do blogging. I think the PR agencies get it well in terms of how you set some of these things up, but you got to be smart around how you do blogging. That would be the second observation in terms of frugal tactics. And then in terms of the cost, blogging's great. You pay for the people anyway, right? They're already making their money. When they write a blog on top of it, it's typically because they're very passionate about the topic that they're going to write about it anyway. So the cost, you could say is what, $85 a post or something like that? Not that much. Sending out a newsletter, well, a newsletter could be $5,000, $10,000. So the economics are much more advantageous to blogging. And there's so many free blogging platforms out there that it's easy to tap into. The second is books. So I'm a big fan of books. And I realize books aren't necessarily electronic, although they can be. I'm a big fan of printed books. So printed books, in terms of all the new types of publishing technologies that are out there, never been cheaper to create a book. So we created a book called The New Data Imperative. It cost about, I think it was about $85,000 for everything that went into it in terms of working with a publisher, creating the book, printing the book, distributing the book. So for us, it was a good idea. The key to this, though, in my mind, and as it relates to social media and Web 2.0, is it enabled us to create a story arc, kind of like you see on TV shows. If you've ever watched, Lost, you know that there's a broad story arc about people that are lost on an island, and they manage every week to fill that up with a bunch of subplots. It's the same thing with books in a way. There's a broad story arc about the new data imperative, and there's a lot of things that fit in it along the way. That's all of those things that surround it. So if you can create a good idea with this book, you can then leverage it across the podcasts and the videos and content syndication and speaking opportunities and bylines and webcasts, press articles, blogs, everything. The key is you got to have a good idea, because if you don't have a good idea, you can put it out on the blog, but if it's a bad idea in the blogosphere, will anybody ever hear it or pay attention to it? It won't necessarily virally take off. The third thing is and you can see in this case how we then place it across things like YouTube, even Amazon.com. That's a great idea to tap into existing communities. Amazon has a great community of people that rate and review articles. We put it up there, and lo and behold, we've gotten reviews from it. So it's yet another community that you can tap into that's pre-existing. In addition, we put it onto our Facebook sites. We put it in. We broadcast it through Twitter. We used a lot of social media in terms of getting that out. So kind of the old world technology in terms of a book launched through a number of new world techniques. In addition to an ebook that we've created, where we've been able to add a lot more rich media content into the book, like videos of the authors talking about the book and certain concepts. So that's actually worked out very well for us. The fourth area is around virtual events. So one thing that we started to see in the last 18 months is that travel budgets were getting cut, and people weren't traveling long distances for training or to learn about new things. So we were cognizant of that, and what we did is we actually created then a virtual trade show where we were actually able to package up all of our content and have a half-day session where we had many speakers talking about our content in a virtual way. So it was great because the audience could still interact with the speakers. It was all done through an online chat. The people could see the content as they went through it. Overall, it was just it's about the same cost as an external event. I think it ran about $30